Harlow, Essex, 1958. Post-war estates still smell of fresh concrete and damp ambition. Radiators tick and hiss. Chalk dust clings to coats hung by the door. His parents are teachers, committed, opinionated, endlessly talking. Not small talk, never that. Arguments about fairness, education, class, politics. Voices rise, overlap, interrupt. Someone laughs sharply. Someone else corrects them. Someone always has one more point. Rik listens before he speaks. Then he speaks before he's invited. The house is full of books. Paperbacks with underlined passages, margins crowded with notes, pamphlets, leaflets, newspapers folded into angry rectangles. Cups of tea go cold while conversations heat up. There is warmth here but no comfort. You earn your place in the room by holding your ground. He learns quickly that words are not decoration. They are weapons. As a child, Rik is alert, thin, buzzing with energy. He doesn't know how to discharge. His eyes track movement constantly, clocking reactions. He learns which comments make adults laugh and which ones make them stiffen. He repeats the second kind more often. Laughter is nice, but discomfort is interesting. He exaggerates voices, stretches jokes past politeness, keeps going long after he's supposed to stop. Silence feels like losing. School sharpens this instinct instead of dulling it. Classrooms smell of floor polish and damp uniforms. Windows rattle, chairs scrape. Authority announces itself in calm voices and expects obedience in return. Rik refuses the exchange. He talks back, performs, disrupts. He's clever enough to get away with it sometimes, irritating enough to be punished the rest of the time. Detention rooms feel familiar, not frightening, but familiar. He treats them like rehearsal spaces, pacing, muttering, replaying conversations, rewriting them with better punchlines. The world outside is changing its tone. The 1970s seep in through the television. Strikes, rubbish piled in streets, faces tightened by worry. And threaded through it all, a new voice begins to dominate. Clipped, confident, relentless. It speaks of discipline, strength, order. It sells cruelty as common sense. Rik doesn't yet know the name Margaret Thatcher will come to hold in his life, but he feels her presence as a kind of chill, a narrowing, a sense that anger is being redirected upward and outward, away from people like him. At home, nobody tells him to calm down. If anything, they encourage the argument. Push harder, make your case, don't defer. Rik absorbs this like fuel. His anger isn't random, it's trained. A product of listening to adults who believe that disagreement is healthy and authority should be challenged. He grows up knowing that politeness is often just submission in a nicer coat. By his teenage years, Rik is already too much. Too loud in corridors, too sharp in conversation, too willing to humiliate himself if it gets a reaction. Friends laugh and wince, teachers sigh and brace themselves. He uses his body more now, throwing himself into gestures, contorting his face, invading space. There's something physical in his humour, something confrontational. He wants to be seen, but more than that, he wants to provoke. Britain feels smaller, meaner. Posters peel, youth clubs close, futures feel rationed. On the television, certainty is rewarded. Compassion sounds naive. Rik hates it instinctively, viscerally, like a bad smell clinging to the air. He doesn't yet have satire, only instinct, but the target is already forming. When the time comes to leave home, he doesn't feel nostalgia. He feels momentum. The house has done its work. It hasn't taught him how to behave. It has taught him how to resist. He carries the noise with him. The arguments, the raised voices, the sense that volume is power and silence is defeat, as he heads toward Oxford, toward performance, toward the place where anger will finally find a shape sharp enough to cut through the room. He is learning how to be unignorable. Rik arrives at Oxford already irritated. The place looks wrong to him, too old, too confident. Stone buildings loom with the certainty of people who have never had to explain themselves. The air smells of wet grass, history, money that doesn't need to announce itself. Shoes echo differently here, softer, slower, unhurried. Voices drop when they speak, not because they're afraid, but because they expect to be listened to. Rik does not lower his voice. It's the late 1970s, and Britain is fraying. Strikes, shortages, rubbish rotting in the streets. The country smells of damp coats and disappointment. On televisions in student kitchens, Margaret Thatcher's voice cuts through the static. Precise, confident, utterly convinced of its own righteousness. She speaks of discipline and strength, of order returning. Rik feels it land like an insult. It sounds like someone telling the poor to sit down and be grateful for the view. Oxford comedy is polite. The Oxford Review values timing, cleverness, containment. Jokes arrive neatly, do their job and leave without making a mess. Rik understands the rules immediately and rejects them just as quickly. The laughter feels pre-approved, safe. He performs like he's trying to start a fight in a library. Too loud, too aggressive, too intense. He pushes past punchlines and keeps going, ranting, interrogating the room, daring it to turn on him. Some people laugh, some stiffen. Rik notices both. Then there's Adrian Edmondson. Adie is tall, broad, physically grounded. Where Rik vibrates, Ade stands. Where Rik fires words like shrapnel, Ade lets silence do the damage. Their first exchanges crackle with tension. They test each other instinctively, like animals working out who moves first. Rik senses immediately that this contrast matters. It sharpens him, grounds him, gives his anger somewhere to bounce. They start performing together and something volatile takes shape. Rik's characters are articulate monsters, furious, self-obsessed, convinced of their own brilliance. He shouts, lectures, sneers, spits ideas faster than they can be processed. Ade becomes the looming consequence. Violence arrives suddenly, brutally, absurdly. The audience doesn't know whether to laugh or brace. That moment of uncertainty, that intake of breath, becomes their signature. Backstage is all sweat and beer and stale carpet. Lights buzz overhead, floors stick to shoes. Rik paces before shows, muttering lines, rewriting insults under his breath. He smells of adrenaline and impatience. This isn't about charm, it's about control, about dominating attention, about forcing people to engage whether they want to or not. He wants laughter that feels dangerous, like you might regret it later. Politically, the anger is no longer abstract. Thatcher's Britain seeps into everything. The tone, the posture, the certainty that cruelty is just realism in a better suit. Rik absorbs it and distorts it. His characters parody authority by embodying it too completely. They are smug, moralising, vicious, convinced they are right. He doesn't argue with power. He exposes it by exaggeration, by turning its voice up until it becomes grotesque. Oxford tries quietly to civilise him. It fails. Instead, it gives him sharper language, better structure, stronger rhythm. He learns how to pace fury, how to build it, release it, then twist the knife with one more line. Ade remains the anchor, the physical threat that makes Rik's verbal excess feel even more unhinged. Together, they feel less like students now, and more like a weapon being assembled. Audiences begin to react. Some love it, some hate it. Rik prefers the second group. Polite approval means nothing. Discomfort means you've touched something real. He wants comedy that feels like an argument you didn't plan to have, but can't escape once it starts. Outside, Britain tightens its jaw. Inside, Rik expands, louder, sharper, more certain that obedience is a con. By the time Oxford loosens its grip on him, he isn't interested in fitting into comedy. He wants to tear something open. The anger has found its form now. A voice, a body, and a partner willing to stand there while it explodes. Rik does not arrive on television politely. He crashes into it. The early 1980s feel tight and bitter. Youth unemployment is everywhere. In boarded shop fronts, in long afternoons with nowhere to go, in the static hum of televisions left on all day. Thatcher's voice is constant now, firm and sermon-like, explaining hardship as necessity, selling punishment as virtue. Rik hears it as a dare. The young ones does not look like television is supposed to look. The sets are grubby. The rooms feel cold. Walls are covered in posters and slogans and mess. There is always too much noise. Bands crashing through scenes, audience laughter colliding with shouting, characters talking over one another. It smells like sweat and chaos and unwashed clothes. Rik thrives in it immediately. He becomes Rik. Rik is everything Rik despises and fears and recognises. He is articulate, selfish, revolutionary only in his own head. He talks endlessly, lectures everyone, interrupts constantly. He wants power without responsibility, recognition without effort. Rik plays him like a live nerve. His eyes bulge. His voice cracks. He spits words at impossible speed, pacing, pointing, collapsing into tantrums when ignored. There is no warmth in Rik, and that is deliberate. This is not a sitcom built on comfort. It is an attack. The camera moves too fast. Scenes end abruptly. Jokes refuse to land where you expect them to. Rik treats the fourth wall like an enemy, shouting at it, breaking it, daring it to fight back. His anger isn't background colour. It is the engine. The country recognises itself and doesn't like what it sees. Students see their frustration made grotesque and hilarious. Parents see noise, disrespect, danger. Politicians see something worse, mockery they can't control. Thatcher's Britain wants young people quieter, smaller, grateful. Rik gives them a megaphone and sets it on fire. Filming days are long, chaotic, exhausting. Studios smell of cables warming up, dust baked by lights, cold tea forgotten on ledges. Rik arrives buzzing, already loud, already performing. He throws himself into scenes physically, flinging his body around, hurling himself into walls, onto floors, into other people. There is no half commitment. Comedy is impact. Comedy is risk. Comedy is leaving nothing in reserve. Fame comes quickly, but Rik doesn't soften. If anything, he sharpens. Interviews become performances. Appearances turn confrontational. He refuses to reassure audiences that it's all harmless fun. It isn't. That's the point. He knows exactly what he's doing. He wants comedy to feel like resistance. Not slogans, not banners, but tone, volume, refusal. Off-screen, the pressure builds. Expectations tighten. The show becomes a lightning rod. Rik feels responsible, not just for being funny, but for being loud enough, for matching the fury of the moment. Thatcher continues to dominate the airwaves, talking about order, discipline, tradition. Rik's response is to make disorder joyful, to make disrespect theatrical, to turn rebellion into farce, so extreme it can't be ignored. Rik grows more exaggerated, more pathetic, more unhinged. Rik understands that the joke is not that Rik is right, it's that he's empty. A man full of words and no solutions, rage with nowhere to go. In playing him, Rik exposes a generation promised everything and handed nothing. The laughter is real, but it's edged with something uncomfortable. By the time The Young Ones finishes, British comedy feels altered. Rules have been broken, boundaries shoved aside. Television has learned that it can be ugly, noisy, political without speeches. Rik stands at the centre of that shift, sweat-soaked, hoarse, grinning like someone who's just smashed a window and enjoyed the sound. He doesn't look back. This was never about a show. It was about proving that comedy could shout back, louder than authority, louder than politeness, louder than a country being told to behave. Rik is no longer an accident. He is a presence. By the mid to late 1980s, Britain knows his face, his voice, the way he fills space. The shock has worn off, but the unease hasn't. Comedy is meant to mellow at this point, to sand itself down, to become respectable. Rik refuses. He moves sideways instead, into sharper satire, into characters who wear power openly and dare you to laugh at them. Then he walks into Blackadder and steals the air. Lord Flashheart explodes into scenes like a hand grenade in a drawing room. The uniform gleams, the boots shine, the grin is all teeth and confidence. Rik plays him loud, arrogant, obscene, a parody of masculinity so exaggerated it becomes ridiculous. He shouts, thrusts, struts. He doesn't just mock authority, he embodies it until it collapses under its own weight. Flashheart smells of leather, sweat, entitlement. He is everything Britain still secretly worships, and Rik tears the mask off by turning it into noise. The audience loves it. Rik doesn't trust that. He understands that laughter can be dangerous when it isn't aimed carefully, so he pushes further. When Alan Bistard arrives, the gloves come off entirely. This is Thatcherism given a human face, selfish, corrupt, smug, completely unashamed. Rik plays him without apology. There is no redemption arc, no softening. Alan lies, cheats, steals, and smiles straight at the camera while doing it. The joke isn't subtle, it's surgical. Rik moves through them with confidence now, but never comfort. He is louder than everyone else, still pacing, still sweating, still burning energy as if it might run out. Thatcher remains omnipresent on the television, clipped, moralising, triumphant. Rik answers her not with speeches, but with caricature so accurate it hurts. Alan Bistard doesn't argue policy, he demonstrates it. At the same time, Bottom begins to take over his life. This is where everything distills. No polish, no safety net. Just Rik and Aid in a room, trapped together. The sets are small, shabby, claustrophobic. They smell of damp fabric, cheap furniture, failure. Richie and Eddie are not heroes. They are wrecks. Desperate, abusive, delusional. Rik pours himself into Richie with terrifying commitment. The voice is nasal, needy, furious. The body becomes a weapon, thrown, battered, humiliated night after night. The violence is relentless, frying pans, boots, fists, falls that knock the breath out of him. On stage, the air smells of sweat and adrenaline. Laughter crashes in waves. Rik throws himself into the floor again and again, bruises blooming under costumes, exhaustion gnawing at him. This isn't slapstick for comfort. It's punishment. It's repetition. It's men who will never escape themselves. Underneath the noise, something darker hums. Rik understands these characters intimately. Men promised something they never received. Men taught that dominance equals worth. Men rotting inside small rooms while the world tells them to try harder. Thatcher's Britain doesn't appear in Bottom. It appears as desperation, failure turned inward, rage with nowhere to go. He keeps going anyway. Tours, filming, television, stage. The pace is brutal. Rik treats his body like it's expendable, like it exists purely to serve the joke. He laughs harder than anyone, shouts louder, hits the floor first. There is no sense of preservation, only commitment. Comedy is still combat, and he refuses to retreat. By the 1990s, Rik has perfected something rare. He can be adored and unsettling at the same time. He can play power and mock it. He can be obscene and precise. He has turned anger into an art form that doesn't lecture. It exposes. Thatcherism begins to fade from office, but its shadow remains. And Rik keeps dragging it into the light, kicking and screaming. He is at full force now, louder than ever, sharper than ever, and completely unaware that the body doing all this damage will one day demand payment. For now, there is only momentum, noise, laughter, and the sound of something cracking under repeated impact. The noise does not stop suddenly. It breaks apart. In 1998, the accident arrives without ceremony. A quad bike, speed, a moment misjudged. The sound of impact is dull, final, wrong. Rik's body hits the ground hard, and for the first time in his life, it does not bounce back immediately. Pain floods in, confusion follows, petrol and earth mix in the air. Something fundamental has shifted. Hospitals are the opposite of stages. They smell of disinfectant, plastic, stillness. Machines hum quietly, indifferent to personality or reputation. Rik lies restrained by wires and time. The body that once flung itself joyfully into walls, floors, fists and furniture now refuses to cooperate. Head injuries do not announce themselves cleanly. They linger, they blur. Recovery is not dramatic, and it is slow, exhausting, humiliating. This is unfamiliar territory. Rik has always attacked obstacles head-on. Now he is forced to wait, to rest, to accept help. There are moments of frustration sharp enough to sting, moments where the old fury surges and has nowhere to go. He is still himself, still quick, still funny. But the engine misfires, fatigue creeps in unexpectedly, concentration slips. The body insists on limits he has never respected before. Something begins to change. Not his intelligence, not his values, but the velocity. The constant forward charge eases. He becomes more measured, more reflective. The anger remains, it always will, but it no longer needs to dominate every second. There is space now for warmth, for generosity, for listening. Friends notice it. Collaborators feel it. Rik laughs differently, less like a challenge, more like recognition. He returns to work because of course he does. Voice roles, appearances, acting jobs. The joy is still there, but so is caution. He knows now that his body is not indestructible. He works smarter, chooses moments, delivers precision instead of bombardment. When he enters a room, people still feel it immediately. The presence has not diminished. It has concentrated. Public affection deepens. Rik is no longer just disruptive. He is cherished, quoted endlessly, passed down. Younger comedians speak his name with reverence. He has become a reference point. Proof that comedy can be angry, political, physical, and still beloved. Britain has changed again, but the shape of his influence remains unmistakable. Privately, life becomes quieter. He walks, he talks, he spends time with family. He runs. Running is simple, honest. Breath, rhythm, pavement. No audience, no expectation, just movement. A way of staying connected to the body without punishing it. The air smells clean, the sound is steady, footsteps marking time. Then, in June 2014, it ends. A run, a sudden collapse, a heart attack. There is no long goodbye. Rik dies at home, 56 years old. The news spreads fast and it hits hard. Britain seems to pause. Social media fills with disbelief, grief, gratitude. Comedians struggle to articulate what they have lost. Audiences struggle to explain why it hurts so much. Because Rik was not just funny, he was permission. Permission to be loud, permission to be angry, permission to refuse politeness when politeness protects cruelty. He showed that comedy could confront power without becoming preachy, could expose hypocrisy without asking for approval. He made space for rage and vulnerability to exist in the same body, often at the same volume. Tributes flood in. They talk about generosity, about fearlessness, about how he lifted others, how he never punched down, how he committed fully every single time. They remember bruises and broken furniture and broken rules. They remember how his characters were awful, and therefore honest. Rik leaves behind more than performances. He leaves behind an altered landscape. British comedy after him is freer, bolder, less obedient. His work continues to echo. On screens, on stages, in voices raised, just a little louder because someone once proved that was allowed. The body is gone. The noise remains, in laughter that shocks, in satire that bites, in comedy that refuses to behave.